Students, this is a lesson about shading and about seeing shadows and creating value in your drawing. So we're just using graphite for this assignment. There's two projects I'll introduce to you that you can upload to Canvas. You can see in this picture there are three things. There are squares, triangles, rectangles, and circles, but that's two-dimensional. These are the illusion. This is the illusion of three dimensions. So when it has perspective like this, it looks three-dimensional. This we would call a cube. What would we call this? A cone. And this would be called a cylinder, and not a ball, but a sphere. So two-dimensionally they have different names. Three-dimensionally they have different names. I want you to draw these shapes using an outline just in the same position that they are here, and I'm going to do that now, and then you're going to shade them. So you'll notice that the side of this cube, none of these angles are right angles, if you remember this from geometry. These aren't right angles. These are kind of, actually they're called rhombuses. Every shape here is a rhombus because no angle is a right angle. And then I have a cone back here. Now, when you're drawing basic shapes, you actually, I'm going to draw this entire cylinder because it's easier for me to do that. It has what's called an ellipse at the top. This is an ellipse. When the top isn't a full circle, it makes more of an oval. Remember, the bottom needs to be kind of rounded. And then I can draw the sphere. Okay, now I can erase that. So what I want you to do right now is I'm just going to label some things. I'm not going to shade this whole thing for you. I'll teach you about shading in a minute, and then you can shade it. It has a bit of a shadow. You can see the shadow line right here. So if the shadow's to the right, where is the light coming from? The light's coming from this side. You can see the highlight right here on this sphere. So every time you notice where the light's coming from, you need to put the shadow on the opposite side. So where is it on the cone? It's on the right side. Where is it on the sphere? It's on the right side. Where is it, on the cylinder? Where is it on the sphere? It's on the right side. So I'm just kind of doing some lines to represent where the shadow might transition. What about the cube? Well, actually, this is a little darker than the top. This is definitely lighter on the left. So you're going to shade those, but there are names for these things. So this highlight I already identified. You should probably write these down so that you can identify them on our final test. There's a highlight on each object. So there would be a highlight here. There would be a highlight here on the cone, and there's a highlight on the side here. So there's also a shadow to the right of the ball. So this shadow on the ground and this shadow on the ground or on the table is called a cast shadow. So you want to write cast shadow and memorize which these are because they're being cast down onto something else. They're actually a cast shadow from this cube out onto the cylinder here. So this is a cast across. That shadow got cast down to right here. And there's another shadow, and it's the shadow that's on the insides of the objects. And that shadow that I already kind of identified here, these shadows, they exist on each object. These are called core shadows. Those are the four things that you want to identify. We don't have names for when it transitions from the core shadow to the highlight. We don't have a name for this blend, but that is a blend, and you have to learn how to shade blends, and we'll talk about that in right now. But you want to shade this and label it for Canvas. Okay, so your assignment is to do these three shading techniques for me. The first one is going to be called hatching. You can write this on your paper when I give it to you. Cross hatching and circular shading. Okay, so the two projects, these two projects, this one and this one, are worth your 20 points for our assignment. Now you notice I have my number 2 pencil. It's a number 2 or an HB. Do you know HB and number 2 are the same thing? They're a fairly medium graphite. So it's not real soft and it's not real hard. Now what I want to do is each of these row of boxes represents a gradient. So we're going to go from white all the way to black on each of these, okay? And I'm just going to quickly demonstrate how to do that. Now, if we're going to have white here, that all we can do is go as white as the paper. We can't do it any lighter, right? So we're going to shade it starting in the first box, and this is called hatching. Hatching is going one direction. It's easier for me to hold my pencil back like this, and you're just going one direction. Now, if I shade like this, I have a hard time moving my hand across. But if I choke back on the pencil, I can get my hand to go all the way across each of these shapes. So I do want to avoid going back and forth like this because you get dark ends and it starts to make rows. I want to avoid having any rows in my hatching. Now, there will be some lines right now. I'm just going to quickly shade across all of these. Now the secret to blending something from a light color to a dark color, do you see that I went back and forth there? I'm so sorry. The secret to blending is that you've gone kind of these parallel lines all the way. You've got to be a patient shader. You want to just change your angle ever so slightly. So I just changed the angle of my paper slightly. And that way, I'm just going to do another row, and I'm going to do it again. And that smooths out these lines that I had in my shading the first time. Now, I can still see some lines, and, you know, they're going outside the lines of the boxes, but I can go shade this, or I can go erase that, right? So I have this eraser. What a great concept, right? Nice invention, that is. So I shaded over that whole thing. Do you notice how light that is? I haven't even gotten to close to black. You're like, Mr. Kimball, this is supposed to be black, and these are all supposed to be gray and get lighter. Well, I'm just using my number 2 pencil to start with, and then I go to the second box, and I'm going to do this is a third layer, and actually I'm going to go over all of the boxes. So this is my third layer over all the boxes. I didn't do this one. And so as I do this, it just builds up and it gets darker as I go. So quickly, I'm going to cover all of them. And again, this is my number 2 pencil. Do you realize I can only get so dark with a number 2 pencil? Do you notice my lead is on the side, not like this? This is why I don't use mechanical pencils to shade, because your lead is tiny compared to this. All right, so this is hatching, just straight hatching. You're going one direction and you with parallel lines. And the more you cross over your lines, the better or the smoother that'll look. So you can see that I have light and then darker, but these are all the same. So now I've got a new pencil, and this pencil is actually a 6B. It's hard to see that, but it's a 6B. And if it was an 8B or a 7B, that means it's darker. So I'm pretty happy with this value. Now I'm going to go to the next boxes and shade all the boxes. Layering it is the name of the game, folks. So here's my hatch marks going across all the boxes with my darker or my softer pencil. Okay, I can erase and clean this up at the end. So now I've got 3 boxes that gradually get darker, right? So you can guess what I'm going to do here. What am I going to do? I'm going to layer it, the next 3, and just go over and over them so that they get darker. Now, how dark can you get with this shading pencil before you ruin your paper, right? So I have seen students shade it so dark they're actually making holes in their paper, but I have a gradual layering and gradual value shift going on here. So the next one is another layer, and it's even darker, and I'm just gonna keep going to the end again. And that's a pretty good gradual shift. Now the last one's gonna be so much darker, right? Now for the next two shading techniques, I'm not actually gonna do the whole thing, because you're gonna follow this same pattern that I just did, where you do the whole row, then you layer it again, and then you layer it again on the next, from the next box, and you just keep layering it till it gets to the end. Now if this turns out your paper, you're pushing so hard that you're ruining your paper, or this turns out really shiny and I can't see the value, then maybe we get you another paper and we try again. Okay, so in the next box, I'm going back to my number 2 pencil, and we're doing cross hatching. So cross hatching, you can imagine, it's just hatching, but you're going to cross it in a more obvious way. So, so I start out with hatching. I can just hatch the whole thing. Do I have to see the lines? No. I'm just doing it really quickly, but cross hatching is taking this at a different angle and just going across. So some artists create cross hatching in an extreme way where they go the opposite direction. I'm gonna go all the way across that as one layer. And then I'm gonna take and maybe cross hatch this second box going another direction. Usually another opposite direction, or another extreme direction, completely different from the last run. So I'm gonna start going all the way across. You get it. That's the pattern, right? We go all the way across and then we layer to the next box and go all the way across. And then we switch our pencil to our darker pencil about here. So the last 3 get done with your shading pencil. I keep calling it a shading pencil, but they're all shading pencils. Okay, the last one is circular, and it is exactly as I said. It is circular. So I'm gonna just take this and lightly do some loops. Now, does that mean that I do perfect circles? No. In fact, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see that. I want to just see some really tight blending going on. So I'm just slowly, patiently shading this in. It creates a little bit of a texture, but it's not that. I don't want to see loops. So I get lighter, and I can kind of go across and do that. This will take you longer than the other ones. When I get to the end, you built it up so much. There's so many layers here that you'll have this really nice, soft, dark, circular shading. You can see how kind of soft that is compared to that, right? This is pretty harsh, and this is pretty soft. So circular creates a really nice texture for shading. It does take more time, and you do have to be more patient. So these will both be due in Canvas. You'll upload a picture of this and a picture of this drawing when you're finished.